Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands you need. From athletic stuff, like a full court pickup game, swish, to athletic-ish stuff, like a half-mile stroll. Get those steps in. And for morning hikes up the mountain trail, good pace. To nighttime ghost stories from the camping chair. What a twist. Whatever level of active, Sierra loves it all. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athletic-ish, Sierra's got it.
Welcome to Quarterlife, because your 20s are a mother, and my mother happens to be anxiety expert Lynn Lyons. I'm Brackett, I'm 25. Optimistically, I've just hit my quarter life.
Hi, Brackett. It's your mom. We're talking everything that goes on and goes wrong in your turbulent 20s.
Hi, Mom.
Hello, Brackett. How are you?
I'm good. What's new with you?
Not too much. We had a bat in the house, but that's been resolved. I'm now officially a mother-in-law, so that feels pretty good. I got a cortisone shot in my big toe, which didn't hurt at all and is like a miracle. And I am now advocating for people to just get cortisone shots in all their joints because it's a freaking miracle.
Okay, so this is now a cortisone lobbyist podcast.
Which no one saw coming.
No.
Yeah.
Big cortisol has leached their way into yet another space.
Not cortisol, that's something else.
Oh, cortisone. Sorry.
Yeah. We could easily say this is a cortisol podcast because we talk about that. But cortisone, like steroid injections, never have come up. But people were really promoting them. I felt like it was a good option for my poor toe that I hurt, and it has exceeded expectations.
All right. Well, maybe I should get one in my poor toe that I hurt.
Oh, that's true. You could.
I don't know if that'll help, though. That was all bone.
Oh, yeah, this was not bone. So anyway, that's how I am. How are you? What's new in your life?
Well, I guess I'm a brother-in-law.
Yeah, that's been going well?
That has been going well. Yeah.
Good.
I think I've settled in nicely to that role.
Good.
You know, lots asked of me, as with most brothers-in-law. You know, it's
yeah.
It's a demanding position in the family to have.
It is a demanding position. Brother-in-law is one of those things when it's going well, it's going well. And then when it goes south, it can really go south.
Yeah, it's almost no news is good news, I think.
Yeah.
Like if you're not hearing about someone's brother-in-law, that means it's good.
That's right. Yeah, very often like the brother-in-law story is just not gonna go well.
No.
Yeah, I've had several brothers-in-law.
And to be clear, you have one sister.
Well, also I have brothers-in-law on the other side too. They're not really my brothers-in-law, but
Yeah, you guys are in-laws, once removed.
Hi, sister. She's probably listening.
She knows. It's not a surprise to her. She was there for it too.
Yeah. And she's there for it now. Yep. All right, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I don't have an out-and-out question, but I just have had a few experiences lately where I've just had a few instances lately where some friends of mine, people I know, are a bit, and I hate to use the term, but they've been a bit moody. And that can lead them to be a little short, or you're talking about something and they kind of just have this adverse reaction to it, or they're like, oh, that thing, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of, you know, they kind of like get grouchy about it. And it's one of those things where because I didn't know they were moody, I'm sort of like, what, you know, you feel like you all of a sudden you stepped on their toes out of nowhere. And that's just kind of a weird thing to navigate. Maybe I'm bad at reading moods, but I don't know.
Well, moods are part of being a human being. And when we, you know, like depression, when we're talking about depression is a mood disorder. So one's mood impacts a lot. And when we talk about a mood, we can talk about a depressed mood, we can talk about an anxious mood. But if we're talking about that mood of, I'm down, I'm morose, I'm depressed. That mood has a huge impact, based on lots of research, on how you perceive things. And so that's what you're experiencing is somebody is in a bad mood, or even they're feeling depressed, they're feeling down. And the way they are viewing things, the way that incoming stuff is perceived, the way it's reacted to, is absolutely a real thing. And one of the things that we look at when we're looking at moods is how then does it become this loop? Because your mood starts to color your perceptions, and then you start making decisions based on those perceptions. You start telling yourself certain stories. Your narrative becomes impacted by your mood, and it can really take you in a direction that's not helpful, for sure. Think of you being in a bad mood or a depressed mood. One of the things that happens is that you get very global about the way that you perceive things. If you're hanging out with somebody who's in a bad mood, depressed, there are some people who are just chronically negative in their mood, and that makes it difficult too. But they will start saying things that are globally negative, like, oh, you know what? Everybody sucks. Or, I mean, I hate everything about Boston, or nothing ever goes my way. And what would you imagine if you're hanging out with somebody who's consistently creating that global negative story based on their current mood? What's the impact on the people receiving that? What's the impact on you?
I mean, it's the Eeyore effect, right? They're bringing
Mm-hmm.
everybody down. It's just
Mm-hmm.
they bring their little rain cloud.
And then what happens when you try and contradict them or point out the fallacy of their thinking? What happens?
I would say they're not generally receptive to that.
Correct, right? So not only are you globally negative, but you're also very unwilling to question or look at the way that your mood is impacting. So, what research says, this is clear research, goes back a long time, is that when people are depressed, they are more likely to recall bad things than good things. So, if they're talking about their childhood, if they're talking about the experience they had at the restaurant the other night, if they're talking about an interaction that they had with a family member, if they're talking about their job, when your mood is depressed, when you go back for information in your memory, you pull up the bad stuff, not the good stuff. That's that Eeyore thing, right? You're like, oh my God, you're always seeing things in a negative way. That's what happens. It impacts your memory, which is so interesting.
And so, with that negative cream rising to the top, does that mean, because I know how memory layers, if you're depressed long enough and you keep thinking back to your childhood, does that mean then forever are you now coloring those memories blue? Like, does that permanently sort of alter your outlook on what has been your life so far?
It can if it goes unchecked or unchallenged, and if somebody doesn't inform you about this. So, one of the things that happens is, say that you're going to therapy because you're depressed. If the therapist doesn't know about this phenomenon, if the therapist doesn't know that somebody who comes in a depressed mood is going to color their past experiences negatively, then they may reinforce that. They may say, yeah, so absolutely, that's why you feel this way now. The reason you feel this way now is because everything in your past was terrible. And that's sort of getting it backwards. Now, we're not going to go to Sally Sunshine and say, like, oh, but look on the bright side of life. Your dad was an abusive alcoholic, but at least he kept his car clean. I mean, we don't do stuff like that. But you really want to, again, it goes back to those discrimination strategies, is that you really want someone to help you question or assess your perceptions of things if you're looking at it through that negative lens. Think about if you go to, say, you go to couples therapy and one of the people in the couple is depressed. Their perception of the relationship, their perception of things that happened in the past, and even their perception of the person's behavior now is all put through that depressed lens. It's funny, sometimes you marry somebody and you're like, "Oh, they have quirks or they do this or that." And you might think they're funny or at least they're fine, or you accept
You
that as a
marry someone and you think they're fine.
You marry someone and you're like, "You know what? He's great. I mean, he brushes his teeth with baking soda, but I can overlook that." That's what I mean by
He's he's fine. That's in their vows. You're fine. You're
You
good
know,
enough.
yeah, yeah, you're good enough. The good enough vows. I vow, I promise in the future to think you're fine. Yeah. Okay, let me rephrase that. There are things about your partner, maybe 40 years in, okay? Let's just say not on the wedding day, 40 years in. There are things that the person does that you know they do. There are quirks they have, their behaviors they have, who knows? The more depressed you are, the worse your mood, the more amplified those qualities become to become globally negative, to become really hard to manage. And so then you go into therapy, and the way that the depressed person is talking about the marriage, the other person may be like, "What are you talking about? Like I thought things were going pretty well, and we certainly have our disagreements, but our marriage hasn't been a train wreck, it hasn't been awful." And somebody who's in a depressed mood will truly pull out all the negative things and then really amplify them. And it's hard to combat that. The narrative, if you're telling a narrative through this depression lens, which remembers and recalls the things that are negative, and you're globally negative, the other person is like, "Well, what do I do about that? Like, we don't have a balanced view of this." And that oftentimes does happen in therapy, is that you go into therapy, you're depressed, bad therapy, not good therapy, just lets you sort of ruminate about all the things that went badly. The therapist, the bad therapist, not the good therapist, thinks that empathy and validation is what it needs to do. Here's the problem with AI therapists. And then you are really just doing the disorder. You are really just helping the person stay in that negative place. You think you're being empathic and validating, and oh, yes, it sounds horrible, but you're not questioning, gosh, we know you're depressed now. So that means that the information that you're pulling up is really going to be through that lens. Now, even if we're just talking about it in short, like, the observation you had, somebody's in a bad mood, somebody had a crappy day, their level of irritation, their level of tolerance, what bugs them is amplified. And that's something that you really want to pay attention in yourself. What often happens is that if somebody is in that mood, and maybe it's a chronic mood or maybe it's comes and goes, is that oftentimes the person becomes either a victim or a blamer. Both of those positions don't recognize your own contribution to things and make relationships really difficult.
Well, I can certainly imagine how that would make things difficult. Let's, after the break, dive into sort of how one combats this both internally and externally.
All right. At Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family. I remember my kids when they were little going to birthday parties there, and we took a family trip one weekend. It was so much fun. The kids were so busy. If you've got kids, you can let them go on the water slides. They can splash away in the indoor water park. It's always 84 degrees. There's a wave pool, a lazy river, and a bunch of massive water slides, including ones your family can all enjoy together. It's just fun. It's active. They'll be happily exhausted at the end of the day. Isn't that the sign of a great family outing, is that everybody's happily worn out at the end of the day? They even have adventure-packed attractions from Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. With 22 lodges across the country, you're always only a short drive away from adventure. So bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. That's greatwolf.com.
Okay, you just said how difficult this effect can be on
Mhm.
relationships.
Mhm.
How do we, if we are either in a relationship, whether it be romantic, platonic, whatever, how do we on the outside, as someone who's not in this depressive mood, combat this
Mhm.
feeling of negativity, this rain
Mhm.
cloud? And then we can get to it. But how do you, if you are listening to this and thinking, oh geez, am I doing this? How do you look at yourself and combat it?
So depending on the relationship, that depends on whether or not you can venture into these waters with somebody that you care about. Because if you're, if it's somebody you know, you're not going to say, "Hey, I've noticed this pattern in your blah 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 blah." But if it's somebody you live with, if it's somebody who you're good friends with, if it's somebody that you spend a lot of time with and that you care about, it really is okay to say to them, and generally not in the moment, right? So if they're really negative, they're irritable, they're picking on things, that's not the time to say, "Hey, let's discuss your mood," because they're in that mood. How are they going to perceive their mood? How are they going to perceive you? When they have the lens on, when they're wearing, what's the opposite of rose colored glasses? When they're wearing the bad mood glasses.
Yeah, the gray tinted glasses.
Yeah, the gray tinted glasses. That's not the time when they're going to be most insightful or, as we said, most willing to hear any kind of criticism or feedback. So, in a time when they're not doing that, you can say to somebody, the way I always tell people to approach this is to say, "Hey, I just learned something interesting," or "I was just hearing about something, and it just reminded me of something, and I just want to run it by you." So you just say, like, "I just came across this very interesting information." So even somebody listening to this podcast
I
can
was
say, "I
listening
just,"
to Quarterlife with Lynn Lyons.
and you say, "There's an interesting thing that happens when somebody's in a bad mood." And the way you perceive things, the way you experience things, the way you tell a story about things is impacted by your mood. And I think I've noticed that when you're in a bad mood, and you can say, "And me too, this happens to everybody. This isn't just you. This is a studied phenomenon," is that you tend to, all of us, tend to see things more negatively. And I think it's just important for you to know that, you do tend to get into these bad moods. I'm concerned about that. I see that. And when you do that, you're very quick to see things that maybe have good and bad, or maybe actually were pretty positive. You're very quick to see those in a negative way. And that impacts you, and it certainly impacts other people. You bring it up in a way of sort of like, "I'm just kind of curious about this," or "I've just noticed this." It is one of life's great skills in terms of emotional maturity to be able to take in feedback from other people, because our first response is very often to be defensive, to feel like we're being criticized, to feel like somebody's saying something harsh. If we flip it and then say, "Well, what can you do internally about that?" If you know that you tend to dip into those bad moods, into that depressed state, if you know that that's something you've struggled with or something that happens to you, it is really helpful for you to question your perceptions of things. And that's something that I think oftentimes we aren't told that we should do. There's a great quote. I talk about Michael Yapko all the time, and he's my go-to guy on depression. He's the expert. So he has this great book called Depression is Contagious, which he wrote several years ago. But there's a great quote from that book that I use a lot in my therapy. I think I've said this before. I have index cards on my shelf, and I take down the index cards and I write things. This is one of the things I write. And here's the quote: "Be aware of your feelings and use them as information and as a factor to consider, but don't allow them to determine your actions. You are not your feelings." Now, that is a really powerful thing to know about yourself. You are not your feelings. Feelings come and go. And if you can begin to understand that your perceptions of things are dictated by your mood, that is an incredibly powerful insight to have into yourself and then into your relationships.
This doesn't feel like it's a very popular notion at the moment, at least in the wider culture. I don't know about the clinical field, but feelings have been given a lot of credence.
Mhm.
Your reactions to things are given a lot of space if you're allowed to feel things. And we were such a repressed society for so long that
Mhm.
perhaps you might say we've swung too far, where we give too much value on that raw feeling
Mhm.
of how something makes you feel determines its validity. It sounds like you agree with that, but I mean, what line are we walking here, basically?
Yeah. Well, and I totally agree with that. And the interesting thing about this is that you can be in a bad mood for a lot of reasons, and then your feelings impact your decision making. They impact your relationships. I think the mistake we make, and I agree with you that we've swung way over in the other direction. I mean, some of the parenting stuff that I hear now in terms of, gentle parenting and how we have to validate every feeling and that every feeling is important. I think that's really not such good advice because we have a gazillion feelings all day long for a whole lot of reasons. And so, this idea that you got to trust your feelings, right? I hear that phrase all the time, just like trust your inner voice. Well, what if your inner voice is in a shitty mood, right? That's not the voice you want to trust. And I think it's really important. And I say this all the time, I've talked about it here. We talked about it just, I think, in the last episode, maybe, is that we're really looking at patterns. And if you are somebody who gets pulled down into your feelings, and then makes lousy decisions or is perceiving things in a negative way consistently, you've got to really pay attention to your mood management, to being aware of when your mood dips. That's not the time for you to trust your feelings. That's not the time for you to say, well, this is my truth. It really is more effective or more helpful to say, this is my depressed truth right now. It's the same with anxiety. This is my catastrophic truth right now, right? I mean, the conclusions that we come to in the moment, the idea that we should trust those because our feelings are our guide is really problematic. And I think that language has been really used a lot, way too much. This idea that your truth is your truth, your feelings are your feelings, that if you feel it, that must be valid. It's not saying that you shouldn't have feelings, and it's not saying that we're going to suppress or ignore your feelings. You just have to be a good monitor of your feelings based on your mood. I mean, let's just think of the things that impact your mood, Brack.
Hmm.
What are the things that impact your mood?
I mean, I can think of a big one. It's the example we always used to use, is especially when the Patriots were winning almost every game.
I
It's
knew you
like
were
if
gonna
the
say
Patriots lost, right? It's like their third loss of the whole season. We would just be like, our week is just worse.
Yeah,
Like we just feel so like everything's just blah. And then
yeah,
they'd win and we'd be like, we're just having a good
yeah.
week.
I know. I remember when we were way into the Patriots because they were, the dynasty. Monday morning, we used to listen to a lot of sports radio. I don't really listen to it anymore, but we used to listen to it like all the time. We had Boston sports radio on in the house. And when they lost, we wouldn't turn the radio on in the morning
Yeah.
because it was just too depressing and it was just awful. And then couple that with the fact that in New England, football season is during the worst weather, right? So if they lost in November, yeah, your mood was terrible. Our moods were terrible.
And like everyone's mood is terrible. Like you're at the gas station, it's like this asshole, this guy, and he's thinking the same thing
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Tommy
yeah,
threw 2 interceptions.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah. That's such a good example. Like say the Patriots lost and it was a crappy Monday morning. You go to the gas station in Boston and somebody cuts in front of you, you'd be like, this fucking guy, right? Like, rah, rah, rah. But if they won, you'd be like, come on, buddy. Yeah, come on in. Hey, I'm not in a hurry. Yeah. Hey, how about those Pats? Yeah, woo, woo. I mean, that is such a good concrete example of the way that you perceive things, the way you treat people. The other thing too is being hungry. Like being hungry totally impacts your mood. And you think about how you make decisions and what you say and how you respond to things. Your dad, my husband, he was like a toddler. And when you guys were little, if you were hungry, you'd be cranky. And your grandmother, my mom, would be like, "Just shove some food in their face." And it was like watering a dry plant. Like you put one spoonful of applesauce in your face and you would be like, "Ah." Your dad, he would be grumpy and I would say to him, "Are you hungry?" And he'd be like, "No, I'm not hungry." And I'd be like, "Well, you're just kind of grumpy and irritable." And he'd be like, "It's not because I'm hungry." And then he would eat something and then like 5 minutes later he'd go like, "You know what? I think you were right. I think I think that I was just really hungry and I didn't recognize it." Moods are so variable based on weather, based on the Patriots, based on your blood sugar, based on whether or not you just had something good happen or have something bad happen. The way you perceive pain is often based on the mood that you're in.
So if I stub my toe, yeah, no, without actually saying it out loud. Yeah, if I stub my toe and I'm having a bad day, I'm just like, "Oh, and now this. One more fucking thing." Like,
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, but if you stub your toe when you're out playing touch football with your best buddies and you guys are having a great time and laughing, you might stub your toe or get hit in the face by accident, and you might be like, "Oh my god, that hurt," "Ooh." Yeah. How you
the
respond, what you find irritating is so impacted by your mood. What's funny and what's not.
well, that's why you gotta know when someone's in a bad mood to stop poking the bear.
That's right. It's not gonna go well. I mean, we know clinically that poking doesn't get people out of bad moods in general. Yeah.
If you have one takeaway.
Yeah, don't poke. Forced tickling, not a mood enhancer. When somebody's in a bad mood and you tickle them,
Don't
generally doesn't
tickle
help.
them.
No tickling.
They start laughing,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. You know what? There's another thing too, that's interesting, and I have heard this before, like I've heard this, and it may be just like this lore at this point, but some psychologist back in 1890 was talking about moods, and he had this thing of saying night thoughts, stay away from your night thoughts. And for him, in what I've heard before, and I don't even know who it is. It's just like this story that's told. It was like after 9 p.m many of your thoughts are just not worth exploring. And I don't know why he picked 9 p.m., but you could say after 11. But the way you think about things at night, this is why insomnia is such a problem, because you wake up or you can't fall asleep and everything gets amplified because now you're in a bad mood or you get catastrophic. So he was basically saying when you're tired, that's not the time to think about things or take your thoughts all that seriously, which is really true. Like, yeah, if you work third shift, you're in big trouble.
I was gonna say that, night workers, I wonder how, you know
Yeah.
I mean, I often think about when we talk about, like, oh, you gotta see the sun, circadian rhythm, and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but yeah, just night thoughts.
I've heard that before, and that is very helpful to me because I don't wake up in the night very often. I'm a good sleeper in general, but every once in a while that happens. And if I look back in the morning or the next day, if I look back at what I was thinking and what I was perceiving at 2 in the morning, I'm just like, not
Yeah,
helpful.
not
Not
good.
helpful. No.
When my cat Alfie wakes me up at 5 in the morning to get fed, I do not have good thoughts about him.
Right.
But then in the light of day, I'm a big fan, so
I guess that's why I'm less irritated by your dad eating breakfast than I am irritated by him eating late at night. The noises that he makes eating. I can tolerate them much more when I've just come home from the gym. Yeah, he's eating his oatmeal. That's fine. I will tell you this. The other the other night, I was outside with the poodle, and above where I take the poodle out to go out is the window for our TV room. And so I was downstairs. He was upstairs in the room. And I was hearing this noise. And I was like, what is that? I thought, is there an animal? Like I couldn't figure it out. He was eating watermelon upstairs. It was coming out the window, down the stairs. It was just, now I was in a good mood. So when I figured out what it was, I laughed. And then the next day I said to him, do you know you were eating watermelon up here? And I could hear you outside when I was outside with Coco. I thought there was I don't know what I thought was out there, like a beaver or a possum, or I don't know what it was. Yeah. So it was funny. Now, it could be very possible that I could be in a bad mood and he's eating watermelon, I will not find it as amusing as I found it the other night.
No, and I've heard him eat watermelon. It's a serious endeavor.
It is a serious
I don't think our audience really will understand just how loud it can be.
All right. So the takeaways based on your initial question. You have to pay attention to your moods. The power move, the move of the ultimate emotional maturity, is to own your moods, know when you're in that mood, and question your perceptions and your stories based on that mood. If somebody is struggling with depression and they go to therapy or they're trying to help themselves with their depression, it is so valuable to hear that the story you tell, the way you perceive the world, the way you think, if you're depressed, is going to be globally negative because your brain pulls up the negative and deletes the positive. That's just the way it works. It's very interesting, and it's absolutely a consistent pattern. So if somebody tells you that and you know that, that's kind of a relief. Like, oh, maybe my childhood wasn't all terrible, or maybe my current situation isn't awful. It may be challenging. There may be things you want to change, but recognizing that global negative perception when you're in a bad mood, you are not your feelings. You should not put your feelings in charge of your decision making. And if you're in a bad mood, it is very, very helpful to own that rather than to blame or to be a victim of your feelings or your moods.
Own your moods, people.
Own your moods. Yep. We all got them.
And encourage those around you to own theirs too. Put some food in their face.
Yeah. Maybe not watermelon.
Thanks for listening to Quarterlife. Have a question for the show? Email quarterlifesos@gmail.com. That's quarterlifesos@gmail.com. You can find us at Flusterclux Quarterlife on both Instagram and TikTok. That's Flusterclux Quarterlife. If you liked the show, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. We'll see you next time.
Class is now in session, and the UPS Store is here to help you ace arriving on campus. Our certified packing experts can pack everything you need, from desktops to decor. Plus, when you pack and ship with us, you get our exclusive pack and ship guarantee. Your items arrive safe or your money back. Restrictions and limitations apply. To get a 20% off packing coupon and for full details, visit theupsstore.com/packing.